Rick, I'll start off if everyone's okay with that. Neil Pionk had said, and I think it seems the consensus, you said you thought Game 5 was the best game of this series. I think there's a real feeling with the team that they didn't show who they were through the first 4 games. And I think that would probably be similar to last season. I don't think you guys showed who you were at your best last season. I wonder, as a coach, what the concern is in having 2 years in which you're not losing games necessarily because you're getting outdueled, and it has a lot to do with yourselves and not getting to your best.
I would agree with that, but I think if you compare the 2 years, Game 5 last year in Vegas was a no-show. So this year we were down a goal, we fought back. Down a goal, we fought back. We kept fighting back. So there's growth there. There'll also be growth from we lost, and knowing that we didn't play our best, knowing that the things that were our strength during the season, we got away from in when it counted the most. Now again, give Colorado a lot of credit. We had a tough time dealing with their pace. They played a lot faster and a lot hard, and they did. And we had a tough time dealing with that. A lot of it is execution, but the players, I think, will grow more from this playoff than last year. But I think that's a good. We did not play our best. We did in Game 5. There were spurts of it, and that we were playing our best, and then we would take a penalty or we'd do something and lose our flow, and we didn't do a good enough job of getting that momentum back.
On that theme of growth, this to me was a fascinating comment by Connor Hellebuck earlier on today, where he said, I'm cutting it a little bit short, but he said, I need to be a part of this team more than I am. Now, the interaction between the team and Connor Hellebuck, quite often it's, a game ends and it'll be like, we didn't really help him out. He was saying that based on the idea that he had felt he needed to come in and steal a game. And that when he wasn't able to and he was pulled in that Game 4, the emotions kind of caught up to him, and he comes out of that. He needs to be more a part of the team. I wonder if you see growth in that statement, and if maybe there's a more healthy relationship to the interaction between your goalie and the rest of your team to be found.
Yeah, well, we've taken pride all year in our team game. That's what carried us, and he was obviously a big part of our team game. And I think it's an example of a player putting a lot of undue pressure on himself, right? That he had to make a difference. Now, you get in the playoffs, and we're watching hockey all the time. There's always a game in a playoff series that the team isn't playing, and the goalie steals a game, and I think that's what he's referring to, right? The reason I explained to you after Game 4, when we pulled him, I wanted to put a little more onus on the players. Okay, we've got to tighten this thing up here. We're not going to rely on him every freaking game to keep us in there. So that was that, and I messaged that to him. But I think that's just an example of him putting a lot of pressure on himself. He's always been a big part of this team. We know that. He's always been since I got here. We've always made sure that we're trying to improve the defensive play in front of him to help him out, which we have done over the 2 years. We have done that. What matters now is that we didn't do it when it counted the most, and that's when he's putting a lot of pressure on himself.
When guys are saying the intensity isn't high enough or wasn't for games 1 to 4, and I think you said that as well. What's that say then about the kind of changes you need to make?
Well, that's going to come. But that's what I meant the other night after the game. Like, we've got to take a good look at ourselves and come up with those answers. Okay, we can tell them all, well, listen, the playoffs, it's a whole other animal. The pace is going to pick up. The intensity is going to pick up. The races are going to pick up. The battles are going to pick up. The player has to prepare himself for that. And I think, so when I say we're going to grow from this experience more than last year, I think we will. But that's what we're talking about. Now, when we talk about that, they'll understand. Colorado, like Vegas hadn't won a Stanley Cup when we played them last year. Colorado has won a Stanley Cup. And as soon as the playoffs started, they took their game to a whole other level, and they did. So that's what we have to learn to do.
So can the same group do that, or does it need to be tweaked?
Again, we have to come up with those answers over the course of the summer. Yep.
And what's your future with it?
Well, you know what? For the last 7 years, since my last year in Tampa, every year I sit there and I talk to Judy, talk to the kids. I'll talk to Chipper and Chevy. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I want to do, but that'll come out.
Okay. So in a perfect world, you're back?
Well, you know.
Rick, I know you sort of answered it there, but like, do you believe this team is built to be a playoff team as it's currently constructed?
The roster is what the roster is. I listen. I take full responsibility for that playoff performance. I do. Our team did not play well. So the standards that I had set for the team and myself, we didn't reach that standard. So I put the onus on me to make sure that doesn't happen again. So the players, I have to get more out of the players. So that's why it's my responsibility to get those guys to the next level. Now, again, you learn. Every game you can learn something from your players. Every game you can learn something new about them. So we just learned a lot about our players. So, okay, that helps.
So what's the change you would make if you could go back 5 games here? And like, what would you do to prepare them better?
Well, that's the problem. We're coming off an 8-game winning streak, so we can talk. I kept telling them, playoffs it's going to go up. It's going to go up. But now they see what I'm talking about. I think they're a little bit awestruck there in that first game. Wow. Because and we kept telling them Colorado's, and they knew it, the much better team than what we saw in the regular season. But they just saw a team that won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. And now that's a growth for them. Okay, that's what he's talking about. That's what we have to deal with. That's where we have to grow. So are we built for the playoffs? We're built for a team that is better than what we saw in the playoffs. I'll answer it that way. But again, that's my responsibility as the head coach to help them get there.
Last one for me. How tough was this year for you, just personally, and why do you want to come back? Like, I mean, it's been a really tough year for you.
Yeah, it was
personally, and yeah, is it just still the love for the game?
Love the game, man. Yep. This game has given us a tremendous lifestyle that we never could have dreamed of as kids. We still love it. Still have the passion for it. Listen, as I tell the players, every day in this league is a blessing. It is. We're treated so well. We're in the best world hockey league in the world. Never, ever, ever take a day for granted in this league, and I never have, and I never will. I just love the game, and yeah, it's been my life.
Rick, you've always said getting into this job, second guessing or criticism is part and parcel with us. Many of us in this room, pondered publicly, about some of the decisions, whether it was line combinations and that sort of thing. If you review, from the old dog can learn new tricks category, I think you've described it as stubbornness to stay with some things that you really believe in. Is that something you'll also look at?
I wear that, yeah. Here's the problem. So if you're not playing well, we're gonna get criticized no matter. When you lose, you're gonna get criticized. He's staying with the same lines. He's not making. So if that doesn't work, and then you make a line change as well, he shouldn't have made the line change. I understand that, but I'm not afraid to make decisions. I'm not, and I'll live with the decisions. My decisions don't always. They're not always going to be looked at the way I look at them. I don't make rash decisions. I talk to the coaches, I talk to the management, like, what do you guys see and what do you think? And then I have to make the final decision. So as a coach, sometimes you can't be afraid to make a decision because you're afraid that it might not go over well. Like, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to live with my gut. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. And then I'll own up to it to myself after. Okay, you know what? That didn't work. I'm a lot harder on myself than you guys are, or that anyone is. And when we lose and we don't play, the first person I look at is me. Even all of last year, I did. It's me I go after, and then I try to, okay, was that the right move? And if it wasn't, you know what, you shouldn't have done that. And I'll own up to it. So I'll take ownership, man. And I listen. I've put ourselves in a position where we should be second guessed. I get that. But I'm not afraid to make those decisions, and I'll live with them.
Absolutely. And one final thing, always balancing it with, the criticism with the compliment. How much pride do you take? I know that it didn't end the way that you wanted to in either of the playoffs, but how much pride do you take in where this team is today and where it was that you found it in the summer of 2022?
So let's go back to that. So they brought me in to do what? Change the culture. We had to change the culture. This organization, this team had a bad reputation. We've improved that. We fixed that. We had to give the team a better identity that gave them a chance to win. We did that. We had to get this team back in the playoffs because it missed the playoffs. We did that. That all being said, so we did all those. We're still very disappointed that we came up short. All right, you can get to 6 or 7 games, right? So we've made huge strides. Is there more to go? Yes, there is. But those were the reasons they brought me in. We've accomplished that, and now we have to take it to the next level.
To that point, Rick, we were all here a year ago, and you were in the room with players, and obviously you're doing the same today. Would you say there's a very different? It sounds like we're hearing a different tone from players than maybe we did a year ago. Would you say that's reflective in your meetings? I know you haven't met with everyone yet, but is there a different tone this year, much more positive to kind of take into the summer than, say, a year ago?
Yeah, and I think there's what's just like I don't know what they tell you guys because I don't read anything. Don't take it personally, but they're taking a lot more ownership, and that's what I've always said. This bad teams are led by no one. Good teams are led by coaches. The great teams are led by the players, right? And they are. And so for our players to start taking more ownership, that's a huge, huge step. We're not going to win until they all take ownership of what's going on here. It's easier for us to give them the X and O's. That's the easy part of it. Is. That's the easy part of the game. To get them to do it is the challenge, and to get them committed to do it is the challenge that they have to face from within.
I know a lot of players, they have too much pride to get up here and tell us what injuries they might have been playing through. We know guys play through lots of things. Can you just give us some insight, whether it's specifics or in a general sense of maybe what some guys were playing through? We know the obvious in Brendan and Vlad, but what about guys that were still in the lineup?
I mean, Adams had a bad hand the whole series. You can't, again, as I've said to you before, if you're not putting ice bags on some part of your body after a game, you're just not playing hard enough, and you're not. So yeah, the guys, it's the other team. You've got to. So that helps you grow. If you're willing to battle through those minor injuries and keep playing, that's all part of growth of where we have to get this team to.
When you say backhand, like, are you able to be more specific? Or
No, well, he's fighting, he's doing everything right. He never goes by anybody that he doesn't give a whack to or a shot to or everything right. That's what you love about him. But with that comes a little bit of pain, a little bit of discomfort, but it doesn't hold him back.
And what about Morgan Barron? What was his actual injury, Rick? Was his knee or?
Yeah, it was, yeah. So yeah, he skated actually a couple days ago. It's funny. So he's coming. I'm walking by him and he's coming off the ice. I said, Morgan, how'd that go? Like he was growly because it didn't go as well as he had hoped. And then he came up later, Bones, I'm sorry, but I wanted it to feel better. It didn't feel better. So yeah, but he wouldn't have played this series.
A lot of guys have talked about, the need to elevate and kind of make sure you don't have another missed opportunity. How do you ensure that happens? And I mean, can it be coached or does it have to happen organically?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, taking ownership. They have to take ownership. They do. Like, again, the easy part for a coach, this is what they're doing. This is what we're going to do. The hard part is to get them to commit and execute it. So I'll use the example of Makar's goal where he went end to end. There was 3 mistakes on that. So that's just 3 individual mistakes that are correctable if they get committed to it. So they're taking more ownership of it, and that's the next step of growth for any team. And so you lose bad. You get something positive, but take ownership of it, and we all do. But it's on me. I'm the head coach, so it starts with me. But I'm some of the conversations they have with me, I think, are sometimes different than they have with you guys, which is understandable. They're very honest and upfront with me, which I love. I got a great rapport with them, and that's very important in today's hockey, is to have that one-on-one ability to speak freely. That's huge. But this sounds to me like they're taking more ownership, and again, it's not going to grow anywhere until that happens, and it's happening.
Sort of on that same topic, I think in the last several years, at moments like this, a lot of guys will sort of say the right things and all that sort of stuff, but maybe this year there's more conviction in it. I think we're picking up on that they have identified the difference between themselves and the greatness that was sort of showed to them.
Yeah.
How are we going to know? When are we going to know? What are we going to see? Is it in terms of sacrifice, in terms of ability, that they've picked up on this, that it's done something? It's not just what we heard here today.
When the games are on the line, and they have to give that second, third effort. That's when you're going to see it, and that has to come just during the regular season, and we saw a lot of it during the regular season. But when it counts the most in the playoffs, and the other team has cranked up the speed, the pace, the intensity, you have to be able to respond. And I think that sounds to me like the players understand that now. So again, when you lose to Vegas, they hadn't won a cup. You say, okay, and then you see that they win a cup. Okay, that's what it took. And now you're playing against a team in the first round that had won a cup 2 years ago and wants to get back there. They didn't like the fact that they lost in the first round last year to Seattle, and they came out with something to prove, and they did. And they're going to keep going. They're going to be a tough out no matter who they play. That top line, that's as good. That's probably the best line in hockey right now, as good as anything. And Makar and the goalie found his game, right? So we didn't exploit that enough. But give them credit. They played it like that's. They play. I said it the whole series. It's the best they played against us every game, but they didn't let up. But even when there were times where, and I know it's mute point at this time, but when we started to take control of the game, and then we self-inflicted a penalty at the wrong time or a turnover at the wrong time. Those are things that they didn't do, and so that's a learning point for our players.
One of the things I was really impressed by them actually is that they didn't do it, that they were that consistent, that the mental game was that strong, and it wasn't just the superstars, right? Middlestad outcompeted, Lehkonen outcompeted, all the way through that lineup, and.
Yep.
Do you guys need a change in composition to make sure that that's what's happening here too?
We have, that's again the coach, we have to keep pushing those. But now they'll understand a little clearer. The playoffs, again, they didn't change any system. They did nothing. They just played harder. They did everything faster. Everything they were doing, they did a lot faster than we saw during the regular season. But I did see it in that last game after we beat them 7-0. They went into Vegas. I saw that, okay, they just raised their game to another level. So it's a matter of playoffs. It's races. Are you getting there first? Are you getting there second? It's battles. Are you going to lose? Or are you going to win it? It comes down to that. There's 5 of them, 5 of us. You got to outplay. You got to outbattle that guy you're up against. And I think that was very clear to our players as it went along, because there were times they were getting chances and they were just beating us back into our zone. Right? They beat us there, and that's why they were getting their second and third opportunities. So that's an area that our players we have to identify, and it's that second and third effort. You get in the playoffs every shift. It's that second and third effort. It's not one shift here or there. It's every shift. The game's on the line, and you've got to respond. And you got to be ready to grow.
Last one for me is on Connor Hellebuck. Certainly a talking point with the number of goals given up. He said that his process was good. He was feeling it as much as he ever has. And you sort of go through that. You can see all the deflections. You can see all the traffic and screens. You can see the seam passes and the number of chances. And still, I'm sure he feels like he wanted to steal more games, steal more goals, all of that sort of stuff. As a coach, how do you assess how well he did or didn't play given what you saw?
Well, because again, he's right. I think we could have done a better job blocking shots. So they're taking wristers from the point in the power play and getting tips like that. To me, that's that second and third. Getting that lane that helps your goalie out a little bit. So I just think in the growth of the team is when the game's on the line like it is, and the intensity cranks up, that you can help your goalie out a lot more than we did. I mean, he's a tremendous competitor. We know he's a great goalie. So that was my message to the team after that second. Like, we got to help. We got to play better here. We got to get our team game back, and we did in that. I mean, it carried over into Game 5, but it just wasn't enough.
Playoffs tell us everything. You say that tells us where you're at. High intensity playoff games. Dylan DeMello says this is a massive summer for this team. That it should question everything. What does he mean by that?
Yeah. Pardon me, about what?
That this team should question everything, that it's a massive summer.
Yep. How they can get them to take their game to another level, right? Whether it's off-ice conditioning, whether it's being on the ice more in the summer. But there was a big difference in my first camp in this camp was much better. They were better prepared, and I think there'll be a big difference in next year's camp. That's what he's talking about. Okay, we got to spend the summer mentally getting better and physically getting better. Like the game is mental, and it's all about preparation. So, okay, this is what we need to do. We got to get stronger mentally. So you can get that. You can improve that over the course of the summer, and you can improve your conditioning, and you can improve your on ice habits. You can do a lot of things, good things in the summer, and I think that's what he's referring to. Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you, guys.